Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. Have you ever wondered why God prevented the entry of a specific creature into Noah's Ark? This is a lesser-known mystery, and today we will delve into this intriguing question. Throughout this video, we will explore biblical secrets, examine myths and legends, and discover what theologians have to say about this surprising exclusion. Don't miss the chance to better understand the Scriptures and their mysteries. Stay tuned until the end, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more revealing biblical content. Why did God deny the entry of this creature into Noah's Ark? The story of the flood begins when God, observing the increasing wickedness of humanity, decides to purify the earth with a great flood. God chooses Noah, a righteous and blameless man among his people, to fulfill a vital mission, to build an ark that would shelter him, his family, and pairs of every kind of animal. The construction of the ark is a monumental task, ordered by God to save creation. Noah, obedient to the divine word, follows all the instructions meticulously. In the book of Genesis, chapter 6, verses 14 to 16, God gives detailed instructions to Noah: make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. Make rooms in the ark, and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it: the length of the ark 300 cubits, its breadth 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. This enormous ark was to have a single door and 3 decks with a window for light and ventilation all around. Preserving species was a crucial point in God's plan. In Genesis, chapter 6, verse 19, he commands, "And of every living thing of all flesh, ye shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female." This command is reiterated and emphasized in Genesis, chapter 7, verses 2 and 3, where God instructs Noah to take 7 pairs of clean animals and 1 pair of unclean animals, as well as 7 pairs of birds. The clear intention is to ensure the continuity of life on earth after the flood. Building the ark was not just an act of obedience but also a symbol of hope and renewal. By gathering all kinds of creatures, Noah ensures that God's diverse creation survives impending destruction. The biblical context of the flood and the ark's construction is essential for understanding the scenario Noah faced. His unwavering faith and determination to follow God's orders set an example of devotion and obedience that resonates to this day. When Noah began gathering creatures to enter the ark, he followed the detailed instructions given by God. God commanded Noah to take pairs of every kind of animal to ensure that all forms of life could continue after the flood. Animals of all types, from large mammals to small insects, were selected. Each creature had a specific purpose in God's grand plan to preserve life on earth. Males and females of each species were carefully chosen so they could reproduce and repopulate the world after the devastation of the waters. The criteria used by God for selecting the creatures were clear: they were to represent all living flesh. In other words, the diversity of God's creation had to be maintained. In Genesis, God instructs Noah to take 7 pairs of animals considered clean and 1 pair of animals considered unclean. Additionally, 7 pairs of birds were included to ensure that all species of birds were preserved. This selection was not random but carefully planned to maintain the integrity of the ecosystem and ensure that life could flourish again. The symbolism of the animals on the ark is profound and multifaceted. The clean animals, taken in greater numbers, were often used in sacrifices, symbolizing purity and holiness. The unclean animals, though fewer in number, represented the entirety of God's creation, including what was not used for sacrifice or consumption. Together, these animals symbolize the fullness and diversity of life, reflecting God's ability to create and sustain all things. The ark, filled with so many forms of life, became a microcosm of the world. Every creature, large or small, had its place in God's divine plan. The presence of all these creatures on the ark symbolizes God's protection and provision for his creation, showing that no detail is insignificant in the eyes of the Creator. In addition, this diversity in the ark foreshadows God's new covenant with humanity and all creatures after the flood, a covenant that reaffirms the intrinsic value of all life. The idea that some creatures were not allowed onto Noah's Ark has fueled myths and legends for centuries. Ancient stories speak of beings like the Nephilim giants, mentioned in the book of Genesis, who were descendants of the sons of God and the daughters of men. These giants, according to some accounts, were violent and corrupt, which is why God decided to cleanse the earth with the flood. In addition to the Nephilim, there are legends that mention hybrid creatures such as centaurs, chimeras, and other mythological figures that were also said to have been excluded from the ark. These mythological creatures do not have an explicit place in the canonical biblical accounts of the ark. However, the mention of the Nephilim in Genesis, chapter 6, verse 4, suggests that there were extraordinary beings on the earth before the flood. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The absence of direct mention of other mythological creatures in the Bible does not prevent these legends from surviving as part of folklore and apocryphal interpretations. An interesting comparison between biblical accounts and these legends is the reason for the exclusion of these creatures in the biblical texts. God commands Noah to take into the ark only animals that he created according to their kinds, excluding creatures resulting from mixtures or corruptions of the original creation, such as the Nephilim. This can be seen as maintaining the purity of God's original creation, where any form of hybridism or corruption was not allowed in the new order that would arise after the flood. The reasons for the exclusion of these creatures may be manifold. Firstly, from a theological standpoint, these creatures symbolized corruption and deviation from God's plans. The existence of hybrids and giants was seen as a disruption of the established natural order of creation. Secondly, the presence of such powerful and often violent beings could have threatened the survival of humans and animals in the ark. The ark was conceived as a refuge of purity and renewal, and the inclusion of corrupt beings would have compromised this divine purpose. These narratives, though not part of the biblical canon, help us understand ancient perceptions of purity, corruption, and natural order. They reflect the struggle between good and evil, purity and corruption, which is a central theme in the flood narrative. The exclusion of these creatures can be seen as an allegory for the need to maintain moral and spiritual integrity in a world that often deviates from these principles. The exclusion of certain creatures from Noah's Ark is a theme that has generated various theological interpretations over the centuries. Scholars and theologians offer various perspectives on why God decided not to allow certain forms of life aboard the ark. A common interpretation is that these creatures, like the Nephilim, represented a corruption of God's original creation. Some theologians argue that the existence of these hybrid and giant beings violated the natural order established by God, an order that he wished to restore with the flood. The Nephilim, as mentioned earlier and present in the book of Genesis, are often seen as a symbol of human disobedience and moral decay. According to this view, God decided to purify the earth and initiate a new chapter with Noah and the creatures he had originally created, without the corruptions introduced by hybrid beings. Another theological interpretation is that the exclusion of these creatures reflects God's justice. Described in the Bible as perfectly just and holy, the decision to exclude certain creatures can be seen as a manifestation of this justice. Noah was chosen for his righteousness and obedience, and only those who were deemed worthy according to divine standards were saved. Noah is a notable example of unconditional obedience to God, following all received instructions even when they seemed unusual or challenging. Noah's obedience was not just a matter of following rules but a deep expression of faith and trust in God. This is a crucial point that many theologians emphasize: true faith manifests through obedience. After the flood, God established a covenant with Noah, promising never to destroy the earth again with a flood and giving the rainbow as a sign of this promise. This covenant reinforces the message that God desires a relationship based on trust and obedience. The story teaches us that despite human failures, God is willing to renew his covenant and offer a fresh start. Furthermore, the exclusion of corrupted creatures can be seen as a lesson about the consequences of sin and disobedience. The Bible often uses stories of disobedience and their consequences to teach moral and spiritual lessons. The destruction caused by the flood is a stark reminder that sin has real consequences and that obedience to God is essential for the preservation of life and order. The Book of Enoch and other apocryphal scriptures offer a fascinating perspective on the creatures excluded from Noah's Ark. Although not part of the biblical canon, these texts provide additional context that can enrich our understanding of the flood narrative. The Book of Enoch, in particular, is a rich source of information about the Nephilim, those giants briefly mentioned in Genesis. The Book of Enoch describes the Nephilim as descendants of fallen angels who mated with human women. These angels, called Watchers, taught forbidden knowledge to humanity and contributed to the moral corruption that led to the flood. Enoch details how these giant beings and their angelic parents brought chaos and destruction, becoming one of the primary reasons for God's decision to cleanse the earth. The exclusion of these creatures from Noah's Ark, therefore, can be seen as an attempt to restore divine purity and order, eliminating corrupting influences and renewing the covenant with humanity. Enoch's narrative emphasizes the seriousness of the Watcher's transgression and the need for the purification of creation. Besides the Book of Enoch, other apocryphal scriptures like the Book of Jubilees also mention beings that were not allowed in the ark. These sources describe hybrid creatures and beings resulting from forbidden unions between different species or between humans and celestial beings. These narratives reinforce the idea that the purity of God's creation was compromised, necessitating divine intervention. Comparing these apocryphal descriptions with the canonical biblical account, we see some important differences and similarities. Genesis briefly mentions the Nephilim without many details, while the apocryphal texts provide a more elaborate context about the origin and actions of these beings. The canonical Bible focuses more on the corruption of humanity and the need for purification through the flood, without delving into specifics about the particular beings that did not enter the ark. However, both canonical and apocryphal accounts agree that the corruption and forbidden mixing of beings were significant reasons for the flood, emphasizing the need to restore the original order of God's creation. The exclusion of these creatures symbolizes the removal of what was considered impure and corrupt, allowing for a fresh start for creation. We explore why God denied entry to certain creatures into Noah's Ark, understanding the importance of obedience, preservation of creation, and theological interpretations regarding divine purity. We reflect on what this story teaches us about our own relationship with God and the environment. Now we want to hear your opinion. What do you think about the exclusion of these creatures? Leave your comment below. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends so more people can learn about these fascinating biblical mysteries. If you like our channel, consider becoming a member. With a symbolic contribution, you help us and have early access to the videos. May God bless you and see you soon.